Okay, so good morning, everybody. Here we are again today on one of our recorded conversations with Love Your Image. And this morning I am delighted to be joined by Mark White. Mark is, to me, the guru on everything LinkedIn. There isn't much Mark doesn't know about using LinkedIn for your business and getting the best out of it. So good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Penny. Absolute pleasure to be here, and yeah, thank you. It's a really sort of interesting topic. So I'm looking to get stuck in with an expert in her field as well as your good self. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yes, and of course, whilst you know vastly more about LinkedIn than I do and getting the best out of it, we're going to be talking mainly today about the use of imagery on LinkedIn. And my first question for you really is, why is it so important to, have imagery on? So, well, we'll start with the profile on your profile on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are very visual beasts, let's be honest. At the end of the day, we see stuff and we react to it. LinkedIn, your profile is very much the focal point. And therefore, what we want is to make sure that that focal point conveys you and me, let's be honest, as well as possible, and in a way that we want to get across. So it's really important to get it right. And I mean, for me, I'll just make the quick analogy. I always consider LinkedIn, not that we're sitting behind a screen, but actually that we've just gone into a big room and we're meeting people. And, best will in the world, you see someone over the other side of the room or someone's coming up towards you, you look at them, obviously, and you make a judgment call. And your profile on LinkedIn is trying to do the same thing. So the better the quality of the sort of profile, the image, that visible bit we've got, then the better it's going to get us across to the people who want to talk to us.
Yes, and whilst I asked you that question, being a photographer and my life is all about imagery, yes, I'm very, very pro having good imagery. And rather than, and you've said to me in the past, some people might say to you, I just don't have an image I like, when you might encourage them how to improve their profile and they don't have one. I know we've come across this before, which leads us down the road, obviously, to how I help people. But then there's also the type of imagery. Yep,
it's so true. I mean, you see people, if you don't have an image at all, then, for me, going back to that big room, it's you with a paper bag on your head. And that's just not going to go down well anyway.
I like that.
But after that, there's different degrees. So, if perhaps on your profile, you've got a picture of you, but it's a little bit pixelated, it's a little bit fuzzy, then actually that comes across and people, they get a bit distracted, but it also doesn't give necessarily the right image of you. And we can go up in levels. We can then actually, it's quite a nicely taken selfie, perhaps, you've done your own photo, but then the lighting's wrong. Or perhaps the background is a bit busy. So actually you don't stand out. Now, I know this is more your area, but you see it time and time again when you look at profiles, the ones that have been taken well, because it comes across. And that's what we want for others looking at our profile. We want to come across in the best possible light. And if the best photo can help that, then clearly it's getting our best side across. I don't just mean front, right or left, but actually the right image, the right message for the audience we're talking to.
Do I love that analogy you've put, Mark, about imagining you're in a room, now with your LinkedIn profile, and the whole, all my photography is very much about capturing the spontaneous in people, because that to me is the real essence of that person. And as opposed to a posed, fixed expression and smile, and it does make a difference to the sort of engagement they'll get.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we when we're talking to people like we're doing here, we're moving. There are expressions, and if you can, if you had the opportunity to take the best possible expression, then that'd be great. If we could touch it up a little bit. I know that's a dubious subject sometimes, but we can do that as well. But actually, it's the real person coming through. And when, with all due respect to people in your trade, could you look at the camera at 45 degrees, turn around, and then And you know, you can tell when that's happened because you've lost the person. It's a nice corporate shot maybe, but actually what we want when we're looking at a profile, yeah, they may be representing a company, they may be representing themselves as a business owner or a freelancer or a solopreneur, if that's what we're called nowadays. But they want to get across the personality as well as the skill set. And there's a real skill to try and capture all that you just can't do with a selfie.
Yes, and exactly, and the, as you mentioned with selfies, perhaps the light might be no so good. So lighting, angles, expression, it is much easier if you've got somebody actually communicating with you, i.e. photographer and subject, you know, to be able to capture that with them, as you would, exactly as you say, meeting people in a room for the first time. We move, we don't stay still. So capturing that essence of somebody in a still photograph, you've got to have an appreciation of that person and understand them. There is a reason professional photographers start with the old 45-degree angle. I won't go into that now, but yes, there is a reason why that can be a starting point, and it can be a good starting point, but I like to take it beyond that.
And there's where the issue often is, because actually, you know, sometimes it's a little bit of conveyor belt. And suddenly you've got 30 pictures, all of which are taken and done in the same way without expanding on it, without taking it further. And that's what we want to do. I mean, the photo at the end of the day can take on loads and loads of different sort of, I suppose, take different routes. It can be one where you want it to almost be funny. You know, you're getting personality across. Generally, we're not necessarily going to want to go down that route, as in go too extreme, because we don't know what the person looking at the photo is going to be thinking. Are they going to be, perhaps, I don't know, if you're a children's entertainer, then yes, you want to show them what they're going to get when you walk through the door, and it's likely to be in costume. For the rest of us, it might be that when we are meeting a client, we want to come across in the right way. There is no has to be shirt and tie or whatever it may be, as from a bloke's perspective. But what we do want to do is give them the real image that used to happen. We walk through the door for a meeting. That's the first impression, because we haven't met them before. Now, with the internet and all that goes on here, they will have looked you up. They will already have an image in their head, and that image is the one that you've given them with the photo. So actually, as a first impression, it's a key one, and having it done, as you've said, in the right way is absolutely sort of imperative.
That's actually also an interesting point, Mark, and you've reminded me how much you mentioned earlier about touching a photo up. Okay, there's what I would call responsible photoshopping, and I don't want to get too much away from the importance of the engagement that you can achieve with LinkedIn. But if you look somebody up on LinkedIn and their profile, and you know you're going to possibly meet them, and this happened to me only the other week, another example. And I said to this lady who I'd met and I'd only met online, I said, it is lovely to be able to meet the person and that they look like their profile image. Then in my world, that's also a good job done. I didn't take her photograph. I've only just, met her, but it's good if you have exactly either a very old or a very pixelated and not a good quality, or one that's been overtouched. People want to see the person that they think they've seen online.
Yeah, and it's not just a practical thing, although that exists. If you're looking up people at an event, and you want to try and see the person that you're going to look for in the room, because you want to try and bump into them, then again, want to be the right one. I recall, I mean, I perhaps kept my last photo a little bit longer than maybe it should have done, and maybe it was about 10 years out of date, and maybe the grey's just that little bit sort of grayer nowadays, and maybe a little less hair. So yeah, it wasn't me anymore. And it's almost, LinkedIn is not a dating site, but it's like the dating sites where the person who turns up actually doesn't look anything like their photo. Well, in a business context, we actually have those same reactions. And as you say, it has to be the right one, keep it relatively recent, but also make it you. And that's where, as I said, is the real skill of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that really leads on Mark, the general use of imagery within LinkedIn, you know, getting away from the profile, you know, in people's postings, and the general use, and appropriateness, I would add in there as well. What are your feelings on that?
Oh gosh, I mean, things have changed massively, particularly in the last 2.5 years. You know, lockdown has changed loads and loads of things in the way of the business life. But on LinkedIn, it's been coupled actually with a sort of change in terms of the people on there. That there's a lot more sort of, I suppose, 25 to 35, 23 to 35-year-olds who are perhaps more used to having elements out on display, in other words, sharing things. So to come back to your question, what I'm finding is that, yeah, and this I think is for all of us, posts where in fact we have a visual element are going to get more attention first and foremost. If you ever go onto your onto your home page and just scroll down the page and then just make a note that when you stop and look at one of the posts, what made you stop? And it's likely to be either you know the person and you think, oh, they're going to have something decent to say, or maybe the little bit of text above that shows on LinkedIn, so 3 or 4 lines, maybe that's got your attention like a headline. But for most people, it is that actually there's an image or there's a video even that actually stands out. So point one, it's good to be visual, but point two, we love to hear about people. And so actually what a lot of people are doing, particularly if they've had professional photos taken, is they are taking the opportunity to have those in slightly different scenarios and adding that to their posts. Sometimes with a lot of relevance, sometimes with slightly less relevance, but in both cases, it's you. It's the person, it's the essence that's coming across, and this gets much more engagement than just normal posts or ones with stock photos. So it's massively important to have this, and if you have the ability to work, as I said, with someone like yourself, then actually you can be shown in lots of different scenarios, and you've just got a wonderful stock then of things that you can put out gradually as part of that branding aspect that we all sort of look to get into.
Yes, and very relevant, actually, you say, when the rise of the stock photograph came about, I must admit, I thought, gosh, what effect is this going to have on the use of, personalized imagery for you and your business? And I think it's coming full circle now, because now there's a lot of cases where people go, oh, I don't just want the stock imagery, excuse me, and and it doesn't. You can now quite clearly, usually, be able to define, well, that's just stock imagery. And actually, this is the real person. This is this business. I am actually seeing inside this actual business. And I love that fact, that exactly. And it all goes with the whole marketing and an engagement with people, as you say, is they want to see the real people.
Yeah. And when I see posts, I mean, not just individuals. I mean, we're talking here more individuals than anything else. But when I work with companies, part of the posting from the organization, well, yeah, we want to tell them a bit about what you do, or we want to tell them a bit about thought leadership, or maybe there's a bit of branded stuff. So here's our products or services in action. But the fourth one is always going to be the human stuff. Actually, here's the team. Here's a member of the team, if you want to use it from a social recruiting perspective. So they show a person and they talk a bit about the person. Or here's actually our charity work. Here's a group doing this. Or here is actually an event we ran. Those are the ones that get most engagement for exactly the reason you mentioned. It's real people doing real stuff, just like you and me, and we want that. And so having those photos is just brilliant.
Yes, it's just get a window out of the way. That's right. Yeah, it's so important, and I love hearing that from you, who is an expert on getting engagement on LinkedIn. And that's what you're advising as well.
Yeah, and
I just wanted to sort of touch on the use. LinkedIn have introduced the little short video clips now on the profile. Going back, I just wanted to quickly, before we close, touch on what you thought of the video clips.
Yeah, I mean, video clips, there's actually loads and loads of new video opportunities in LinkedIn, but the one you're specifically talking about there is, they used to call it cover story, which was actually, that was really quite sort of dodgy. They've now rebranded that as profile video, I think. Anyway, instead of your photo, you can have a 30-second video clip. Well, again, it is serving that same purpose that we talked about with these, you know, the static photo, as it were. It's trying to get you across. But of course, there's much more opportunity for, well, expression, for differing things to come in, but also, of course, for going slightly awry. In other words, we're getting a bit more of the person than we were able to see in a single image, of course. And therefore, we need to orchestrate these videos in a way that's going to come across well. And some of them where, you know, perhaps it's just, oh, I better do it. So they get their phone out and they and they think, well, what am I going to say? Oh, I'll make it up. No, you want to come across naturally.
Yeah.
Desperately want to make sure that you have A, practiced, but also B, determined what is the message you want to get across. You know, when we have a photo, it's a message that we're giving. In a video, it's multiple messages in multiple ways. So it's really important. It's a really good thing. You need to come across as confident. You need to, if I can go on brand here, love your image. In other words, you need that confidence there. And so this is all part and parcel of getting you across in the best possible light to your audience.
Yes, no, absolutely, Mark, absolutely. And I'm actually not going to, I think there's a whole nother conversation for us there on the use of video. And certainly for me, you know, it's an area that I do also help. But Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fabulous. I think we've touched on some very relevant and important points. So when we load this image, obviously your contact details will go and people will be able to find how to get in touch with you when I put this recording up on YouTube. So thank you so much, Mark.
And thank you, Penny. Been a pleasure.
Lovely.